AJ from Columbus, Ohio, there are some hadiths that are racist. Are they authentic? Hadiths that are supposedly racist or contain some type of racist connotation or statement or whatever the case may be, are like any other types of hadiths. Some are authentic and some aren't. Hadiths about Iman, about Salah, about Tafsir, etc. As far as hadiths that are authentic, and it mentions a slave or an Abyssinian slave, كأن رأسه زبيبة, if his head was like a raisin, okay, etc. Then first and foremost is you have to understand what is meant by those hadiths and the context of those hadiths. One of the most famous of those hadiths, the Prophet ﷺ says about obeying the ruler, okay, listening to the ruler, even if he was an Abyssinian slave. One version says, even if his head was like a raisin, etc. This hadith is not a dispraise of black people or Abyssinian people or African people. But the hadith is saying in 1,000 words, obey your ruler, listen to your ruler, even if you dislike how he looks. And even if you look down upon his lineage and his genealogy. And even if you think or feel for one reason or another, right or wrong, that you're superior to him, obey your ruler. That's what's meant by that hadith. The Arabs, and how they look towards anyone besides them, whether they were black or not, anyone besides them, they look towards them a certain way. And that is the concept of a person being tribal, a nationalist, a racist, etc. A person looking at himself being superior. I don't care whether black, white, purple, or green. If they're not me, then they're less than me, and I'm more noble than they are. Okay? So that's first and foremost, you have to understand a piece of history. Arabs, they had nicknames for other people. They called the Romans names. They had tribal issues among other tribes that were Arabs. Their poems, hadiths that were fabricated about blaming and condemning other Arab tribes and clans. Okay? So there's always going to be that hierarchy and that aristocracy among those people who think that they're nobler than the next man, whether they were African or not. That's first and foremost. Secondly is, there's a well-known fact, it's an established fact, is that the relationship between Arabs and between Northeast Africans, the Horn of Africa, Abyssinia, obviously nowadays we have Djibouti, Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, etc. The Horn of Africa, all right, is very close to the Red Sea, the Arab Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen, Qatar, etc. So people, they traded. They traded spices, weapons, technology, knowledge, and they also traded slaves. This is a well-known and established fact. So many people who were in the Arabian Peninsula that were slaves from being captured or however they were slaves, they came from that part of Africa. So it's well known, that type of slave from that type of lineage. And obviously, first and foremost, the person is not Arab. He's not from Banu Hashim or this tribe or this clan. And on top of that, he's African and he's a slave. So of course, they want to look down upon that person. He's not us. He's not from our clan. He's not from our race. And on top of that, he's not a noble. And there are many nobles from Abyssinia, such as Negus, okay, Najashi. There are verses sent down about him in the Quran. The companions, they made hijrah to him. The mushrikun, many of them before they became Muslim, and those who died upon shirk, they went to him and they talked with him and they brought him gifts and they respected his court. So it's not necessarily an issue of black, Arab, black, white, but it's an issue of nobility versus peasantry, let alone a slave, someone of low birth, someone who's been passed on and handed down and captured. It's not the same. So therefore, they're not Arabs, number one, and they're black. And the reality is, and it's not upon us to be, we have to be honest and transparent, is that there are countless lines of poetry in which Arab people considered blackness as a whole and a black person or any color of skin to be a defect and to be ugly and to be looked down upon. That's a fact. That's a fact. No matter how many feathers are ruffled or how many people get their, as they say, quote unquote, excuse my French, my expression, their knickers in a twist, whoever gets mad and upset, it's a fact. You read the Arabic poetry and you find many people talking about blackness and how it's an aib. Even in the books of fiqh, you'll find this. Some of the great imams, you'll find them making statements that if a man married a woman and he didn't know what she looked like and she turned out to have dark skin, the marriage contract could be null and void just because he has dark skin. All right? So there are many different statements, and it's well-known, established fact in Arab culture that they look down upon different people And from the people that they looked down upon were Africans, the people who had darker skin than they had. All right? And that's a long discussion with regards to who is an Arab, and with regards to black being a race versus a nationality, and with regards to what do Arabs really look like? What are they supposed to look like? Are Arabs pale and white, or are Arabs supposed to have dark, rich skin coming from some baked climate? Okay, and the whitewashing of Arab identity in the 19th and 20th century. But that's a long historical discussion. And like we always say, don't take this stuff from me, guys. Wallahi, we're not making nothing up. It's not coming from my top pocket. Read the books, do your research online, and you'll find the facts for yourself. All right, for yourselves. So a person is not Arab. A person is Arab, but they're not from their clan, they're not from their tribe, or they are from the clans and the tribes, but they're not high-born of nobility, let alone being a slave, let alone being an African. They're not going to want to obey that person, and they're not going to listen to that person. So the Prophet ﷺ said, listen to the leader, obey the leader, respect the leader, even if he's someone that you look down upon. Clear? Inshallah ta'ala. Also, the concept of black people being looked down upon and blackness being something that's ugly and something as a means of being marred, that's only subjective to the Arabs. If the Prophet ﷺ was from a different lineage, then there will be other cultural norms that would be looked down upon. So if you go to African people and you bring someone of a certain color or weight or height or whatever the case may be, it's going to be the opposite as well. It's going to be the opposite as well. All right? So you talk about food. My culture, I don't eat spicy food like that. Food is not supposed to be spicy like that. It's not supposed to burn your mouth. You're supposed to be able to taste the meat, taste the flavor. Salt and pepper is all you need on a steak. Nothing else. A little bit of garlic, a little bit of butter. That's it. That's subjective. To another culture, that's going to be bland. It's tasteless. And the person doesn't know how to cook who just puts cracked pepper and sea salt on the steak. So these things are always subjective, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And that's how they look at beauty, and that's how they look at ugliness. And that's their culture. That's how it was. So you have to understand the context of that. Last but not least is, if there's a hadith that you find just praising blackness or a black slave or this or that, then there are other hadiths that you want to find talking about black people going to paradise, talking about black people being given privilege, and righteous people, prophets and messengers being black. So it's not just a one-sided coin. Everyone understand this? So there are many isms out there. There's racism, there's tribalism, there's colorism. Among one tribe, among one race, he's darker, he's lighter. This person gets the job, this person doesn't get the job. And even among people of fair skin, whether they come from Europe or other than Europe, there's tribalism and there's nationalism. How do the Irish look at the Scottish? How do the Scottish look at the British? How do the British look at the Scottish? You ever seen the movie Braveheart? You've read any books about that? About tyranny and oppression? And I'm sure some of the people from Scotland, their skin was just as pale as those who came from England. Everyone understand this? The French, the Germans, the Italians, the Spanish. How do the Italians look at Sicilians? How do Sicilians look at Italians? All right? So that's Jahiliyyah. So therefore the Prophet ﷺ, he is the one who established respect. He's the one who established unity. And he is the one who brought the message of Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The best of you in the sight of Allah, to Allah, are those who have the most piety. And the Prophet ﷺ is the one who brought the concept and the realization of Inna Allah la yanzuru ila suwarikum. Allah doesn't look at your images. Allah does not look at your outward appearances. Walakin, however, yanzuru ila qulubikum wa a'malikum. Okay, he looks at your hearts and he looks at your deeds and your actions. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. That's in brief. And this is for any Muslim asking about these things, let alone non-Muslims who try to quote the authentic sources and say that the Prophet was a white Arab who had black and African slaves. He called them names, he gave them derogatory terms, so on and so forth. You have to deal with all of the facts, put all of them on the table, not just one or two facts. All right? However, to keep it real, guys, we got to be real. That's the only thing we can do. Racism, prejudice, discrimination, colorism, tribalism, these things exist among the Muslims. And it's not an accident, and it's not an isolated situation. They have existed for years, and they exist to this day. So let's not be fake about it, right? And last but not least, let's not get upset and mad at someone who's shedding light upon the reality. And if there's someone talking about racism and discrimination and colorism among the Muslims themselves, before they talk about the non-Muslims and the police and brutality, you can't get mad at that person. And if you're not a racist, And if the person knows what he's saying is a lie, it's not true, Muslims don't have no racism, Muslims have no colorism, Muslims have no tribalism, these things don't exist among the Muslims, then why get upset? The only person that's going to get agitated and upset and disturbed is someone who knows that it's the truth and he wants that truth to be suppressed, and that person, they want that truth, or it hurts them and it bothers them, it pains them. But if you didn't do anything wrong, your masjid has no racism, you're the imam of the masjid, you condemn it, it's a well-known, established fact that no racism is allowed, then why get upset? There's no point or no purpose of you getting mad and upset if you're not guilty of a thing. Everyone understand this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best.